Hi, everyone. This is Meredith with OHA. And just to begin the meeting, well, before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded and that we will have the closed captioning and live transcription available. We just have been trying to remind everyone to state their name for the record before they speak. And just remember that it's an auto transcription, so it's not always 100% accurate. And then also at the end of the meeting, we'll have a public comment period of about 15 minutes toward the end, depending on how our conversation goes. And we just ask that members of the public keep their cameras off if they can and stay on mute during the beginning portion of the meeting. And then once we open up the public comment period, you'll be able to raise your hands and give your comments. So, thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jesse Sweet with OHA. We have a little bit of an unusual meeting today. Mason has a conflict and was unable to attend. He had arranged for Anne-Marie Backstrom, who sits on the Equity Subcommittee, to be his proxy to facilitate this meeting. And Anne-Marie had a last-minute conflict, and they are unable to attend. So this leaves us potentially without a facilitator for this meeting. What I would like to suggest is that if one of the subcommittee members would like to volunteer to facilitate, we can go that way. Alternatively, if there are no volunteers amongst the subcommittee members, I can facilitate. That's a little bit awkward because, you know, I won't be making any motions, of course, and I wouldn't be taking any votes or steering the conversation in any particular direction. But it would allow us to continue with the meeting. So I'm going to let everybody sit with that information for just a minute and consider whether you would like to volunteer to facilitate this meeting at the last minute.
Jesse, I don't want to. I'm not volunteering, but do we even have a quorum? I see Barb and Rachel.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a good point. So while everyone is mulling this over, I will call the roll. Barb Hansen, I see you here.
Yes, I'm here.
Is Kim Goletz on the line? Dr. Knox?
Here.
Sarah Present is here. Mason Marks is not here.
I'm here, Jesse. I have another meeting that I have to attend in parallel, so I might have to just pop in periodically.
Oh, okay. So Mason Marks is here. And do we have a liaison from the Equity Subcommittee?
I can do that.
All right, thank you, Pilar.
Mm-hmm.
Mason, I'm not sure if you heard my setup where I was asking for volunteers.
No, I missed the beginning.
Yeah, so I opened the meeting and asked for volunteers, and then I called the roll. There were no volunteers to facilitate, and since you were
Anne-Marie not here?
Yes, I'd sent you an email, which maybe you haven't seen yet. Anne-Marie had a last-minute conflict arise, and they are unable to make it.
Okay.
Jesse, actually, I would volunteer. I was waiting for you to finish calling roll to determine if we had a quorum. Because if we
Yeah.
don't, then maybe we don't proceed with the meeting. And I'm not sure if we count Mason as being half here or how that works.
Well, I'm here for
before.
now, but I'll have to step.
And Mason, of course, could facilitate the meeting while he's here, but I'm happy to pinch it.
Yeah, I'm gonna get called away in pretty soon, so I'm sorry about that.
I think even without Mason, we have 4 out of 6 with Pilar serving as the equity liaison. So Mason, I'll defer to you whether you would like to facilitate this meeting as you're able, or whether you would prefer Barb to facilitate.
Yeah, I would love to do that, but I'm just not going to be able to be fully present. I'm hoping I might be here just at the time when there are some votes so that I can express my opinion, but it's probably best if someone else takes the lead.
All right. Thank you very much, Barb.
All right, thank you. Jesse, I believe you are next on our agenda for an OHA update.
Okay, thank you. I want to, first of all, clear up a little bit of confusion that came up earlier in the week about the full board's meeting date. We had listed an incorrect meeting date on our website of March 16th. The correct meeting date is March 23rd. All of you should have that in a calendar invite. It's been corrected on the website. And again, for everyone listening, the correct meeting date for the full board meeting is March 23rd. The link is on our website. At that meeting, we'll be hearing a presentation from Oregon Government Ethics Commission. And this presentation will cover conflicts of interest as well as other duties and responsibilities for Oregon public officials. So I encourage any subcommittee members who are able to attend and listen in to listen into that presentation, as well as the board members who will be present. We did wrap up rules advisory committees for products, training curriculum, and testing. And the next step in the process is we will publish a revised draft on April 1st, and there will be a public comment period from April 1st through the 22nd, where any member of the public can submit written comments. We will also have public hearings on the 18th and the 21st of April. And these will be virtual public hearings for any members of the public who prefer to give their comments verbally rather than in writing. Finally, for board members and subcommittee members, Meredith sent an email today reminding everybody to complete their code of conduct forms. I know some of you have done that, but for those of you who haven't, if you could complete those forms and return them to Meredith, that would be very helpful. So I will now turn it back over to our facilitator du jour, Barb Hansen.
Thank you, Jesse. And I actually have a question for you. Are we still supposed to complete something? I forget what it was called. It was this new system the state of Oregon was going through, and there were some tasks we were supposed to do last fall, but I think as of early December, I know I still couldn't log in. There was some, it has the word work in it, but just to clarify our expectations, and I apologize if Meredith or you have sent us information, but it's sort of fallen into the back of my mind that it's something I need to complete, and perhaps others as well.
Yeah, that's Workday, and I see that Meredith just turned her camera on, so maybe Meredith has a little more information on this.
A little information. Barb, maybe when you have a chance, if you could send me an email and like let me know what it is that's happening with Workday. I only have limited access to it, but I can talk with our liaison that'll be able to help us figure out if you need to do any of the training that's in Workday.
Yeah, I serve on another state advisory committee or board or council, and I was getting reminder emails last fall, but I wasn't able to log on. So I don't know, Sarah or Mason or Rachel or Kevin, anybody else, have you gotten those reminders? And maybe your tasks were all done, but I couldn't.
Yeah, I was able to get in, and again, I sit on another board, so it got confused because I ended up having 2 logins. But we got that reconciled, and I did do them back in December or something. So
Oh,
my understanding is
that's
that it's still
awesome.
necessary, and you may not be. I don't know about reminder emails.
2 logins is better than none, Sarah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, I'll follow up with Meredith.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into it too for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm glad Mason is here, or at least his picture is here, because the next agenda item is to have a discussion on votes on licensing and spiritual and religious use of psilocybin. And we have 40 minutes to talk about that topic. So Mason, are you able to, if you're present with us, able to share?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thanks, Barb. This is just something that's been raised periodically throughout this process. How do religious organizations fit in with this whole picture? And actually, there is a document that I think Anne Marie sent out. Does anybody have that by any chance? What's the first thing on that? I don't have that handy.
Mason, are you looking for the motions document or are you looking for John's presentation?
The motions document.
Okay,
But,
I'll go ahead and,
I don't recall seeing that. If you could, I saw the John's document was sent a few times, but I actually was looking for a motions document. Did others on the subcommittee get that?
Yes, Sarah, I got the privileges and duties like 4 times, and I didn't get the motions.
Thanks, Pilar. I also got several versions of the privileges and duties, but I don't recall seeing a standalone document that was for motions. And often Mason does send those, so I don't know if one was sent.
I believe Anne Marie may have sent it.
yeah. There may have been a little mix up in the distribution. I have screen shared the document that Mason has intended to be shared with this committee. And, you'll see up at the first point, we have topic 1 and a proposed motion.
Great.
Yeah, so this is pretty self-explanatory, I guess. This is just a special endorsement for spiritual or religious organizations that would grant them an exemption to some of the other rules. One of those rules is that, or draft rules, is that licensed manufacturers cannot have any other species, any other fungal species on their premises. And I think for some religious organizations, they don't only work with one species. They don't work with just Psilocybe cubensis. They might work with other types of mushrooms like Amanita, for example. And so if they were to become licensed manufacturers, just having those species on the premises would violate the current draft rules. So it seems like in order to allow churches and other spiritual and religious groups to function in the system, they might need to have a special endorsement that acknowledges there's some differences there between them and a more commercial manufacturer.
This is Barb Hansen, member of the advisory board and subcommittee. So I have a question, Mason, and I'm not sure if it's for you or for maybe Jesse, just as a point of order. If there wasn't any language in the ballot measure, which has become statute, regarding any sort of religious or spiritual endorsement, or which allowed exceptions to having to follow some of the licensing rules, etc. we're just recommending to the OHA that that be considered? Or, I mean, in my mind, it would have to take legislation to change what's in the ballot measure. But, you know, I'm happy to stand corrected if that's not the case.
This is fine under the measure. It's more the rules that are the issue.
Pilar has her hand up.
Sorry, Pilar.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Rachel. Well, I appreciate the spirit, and I appreciate this topic very much, because it's one of the ways that will allow the relationship and the practices with psilocybin outside of the clinical Western models. To me, everything else we've been working on still falls within the umbrella of clinical Western models. This will allow people to actually embed indigenous practices and spiritual practices into working with psilocybin.
Sarah?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the conversation around the entheogenic practitioner or manufacturer, I'm just going to say it's been really challenging for me. I think I want to have an inclusive, an equitable, an affordable program. And I think that there's a lot of challenges in pulling out separate factions of it and making sort of parallel pathways. And I feel like I would like to challenge us to make a program that is flexible enough to include all uses. I understand the legality challenges, and I just overall feel like the entheogenic practitioner, a lot of the arguments around use, types of mushrooms, types of facilitators, it puts it into a limited framework, whereas I feel like psychedelic ceremony in itself should be legal, right? As opposed to fitting it into the psilocybin assisted therapy measure 109 framework that is inherently limited to psilocybin. I want to keep everything open, and I also feel like perhaps it should be another, another measure to overall work on allowing ceremonial psychedelic use, which could include other things besides psilocybin, like LSD, like ayahuasca, like other things. So I'm really struggling with how to not perpetuate separations, and make this work and be safe for everybody. That's my discomfort.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Rachel?
Yeah, Sarah, I hear what you're saying exactly. I think this is the solution, actually. So I kind of want to better understand why, what's written here, and more broadly, what the entheogenic practitioner framework contemplates is challenging, because I think it, as I read this and as I read through that, and very shrewdly, to me it sounds like this is a viable pathway to do exactly what you expressed as an aspiration for this program to become, or this program to foray into. To me, this is a clear pathway in that direction. So I'm just wanted to hear from you what you think is prohibitive.
And sorry, just to respond to that, I hadn't read this particular measure about manufacturing before, so I'm still trying to figure out how that fits in my general concerns around the conversation that's been going on around this. Sorry, Pilar.
Thank you. Go ahead, Pilar.
Sure, no problem. Thanks. I think this is a place to start. We have to start somewhere. And I think trying to defer this to the larger umbrella of entheogens and entheogenic practitioners, it's would be very complicated, precisely because of the challenges, for example, around entheogens that are plant-based and entheogens that are not plant-based, and who owns what, and the social contexts that allow different pathways of privilege and lack of privilege for people to use them. So I think that because psilocybin is here, it has easy access. It's like Rachel said, it's a place to start. It's a pathway for us.
Thank you. I have a wordsmithing question. I'm wondering, in this line out the under motion 1, the second sentence, this endorsement will make entities exempt from other manufacturing rules. Could we change the word other to be certain manufacturing rules, and then those would be spelled out in the process? It just feels like other is kind of global and imprecise. But I don't know if that addresses your concerns, Sarah, for example. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead,
I think it does.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, Rachel. I'm not doing very well on raising my hand.
Go ahead, Sarah. I'll go after you.
Without knowing how that endorsement is determined to be given a yes or no, it's hard to. I think that makes sense from certain, yes, but I think the underlying question is, how do you get that endorsement and who qualifies? So this motion as is, I think, is an appropriate way. I think there's just so much conversation around how to get there that still needs to be had.
Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm so supportive of your language change there, I think, right? Because that, like, in the conversation we had in the equity subcommittee yesterday, we recognize that what we're really talking about is relaxing some rules that have already passed through the board, and then maybe contemplating new rules for these folks. So I think certain is appropriate. And Sarah, I completely agree with you. I think this is step 1, right? This motion would be step 1, and then that would open the door to working further to identify what are the parameters to being awarded, right, being granted this endorsement.
Sarah?
So to be blunt and straightforward, what I see here is that somebody who has a different species on site cannot be arrested for it, right? Cannot face legal ramifications from having other species besides psilocybin cubensis. That's the ultimate goal of this motion.
If they have this endorsement, you mean? They couldn't be arrested. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion, or does anybody want to formally make this motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to move that we adopt motion number 1 as newly written with Barb's suggested change.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let me see, Jesse, I don't have the list of us, but I think there aren't very many of us present. So I will start. Let me just start with Sarah because you show up in the top of my screen. Sarah, present.
I'm gonna still have to say no.
Okay. Rachel Knox,
Yes.
Pilar,
Yes.
Mason, are you present for a vote?
Yeah, I'll vote yes.
This is Barb. I'll vote yes. Kevin, are you on this subcommittee?
No,
Sorry.
I'm just a lurker. I'm on the general board, but I'm just here just to, I'm just a visitor, so to speak. So, yeah.
So I'll ask Jesse or Meredith to correct me. Are there any other licensing subcommittee members present for a vote I should call upon?
No correction is needed. You've got everybody.
I believe we have, let me see, 4 yeses and 1 no. So this motion 1 passes. And I have to go back, sorry, exit full screen to go back to see the agenda. The next item is to discussion and vote on access for people with disabilities. Sorry, few options. No,
Hey, Barb, this is Rachel. I think
Yeah.
there's, within that first discussion, we had a second.
Oh,
topic.
I apologize.
Okay.
I'll blame it on my claim that I didn't see the list of motions before the meeting. Which
All the
doesn't
great-
mean it wasn't in my inbox, but I didn't see it. So, okay, sorry. The topic 2 then is the framework for entheogenic practitioners. Motion 2, the OHA shall adopt the regulatory framework for licensing entheogenic practitioners titled Privileges and Duties of Entheogenic Practitioners. And this is the document that we did receive, I think, multiple versions updated. So Jesse, I don't know if we need to put that on the screen. I'll defer to what the committee would like us to do for this motion, because that was a multi-page document, I believe. Any thoughts by subcommittee members on how, oh, sorry, Rachel, you have your hand up. I apologize.
I do, and this is where I want to say, in this framework, it does spell out, it does contemplate the criteria for being granted these entheogenic practitioners, which would cover what we discussed in topic 1, motion 1 that we just passed for manufacturers. So I just wanted to bring us full circle there.
So just for clarity, if we vote on this motion, we are voting essentially on accepting this draft 9 11-page document with this motion. Jesse, do I have that correct?
You do have that correct, and I'm sharing the first page of the document now. Can you all see that?
Yes.
I'm happy to scroll around if there's any particular part that any committee member would like to put up on the board. But as you mentioned, it is an 11-page document.
I will call out Sarah to see if there are any particular, or any of the members.
I was just going to say, can we go to that section?
Yeah.
Can we go to that section that describes the criteria for, and I think that would be page 2. It's application for entheogenic practitioners and privileges, section 1 through 4.
Sarah.
I don't know if I want to be the first one to talk. So I feel a lot of challenges around this, and I think that there are a lot of potential unintended risks, and I'm I'm not excited about this as the way of going about this framework. So I'm going to open it up because I'd like others to convince me otherwise. I think if it has to do with group sizes and facilitators, and we need to adjust the ratios that we've talked about to make these practices possible under the framework that we've discussed already, and maybe we should consider that. I don't like having a separate framework for different types of practice. I'd like for our framework to be inclusive of any ways that it's going to be used, so that we can actually still have accountability and safety for facilitators, for programs in some way that is more manageable. I do think that this is important work, and I do think that, like I said, I want psychedelic ceremony to be legalized in all the way. I don't know that this is the route to do it. And I'm going to just spout my concerns because I'd love to just bring them up. And one of the concerns around it is making it affordable for people. And I'm really challenged with the idea that the only affordable way of getting psilocybin would be to potentially have to sign into a group or church or spiritual group that has an ideology. I think there's a lot of pressure on people, and I question the actual equity aspects of that. And I'd like to challenge us to make a program that is otherwise affordable without needing to join a group like this. So yes, please help me reconcile these. I see hands up.
Mason.
So, I mean, these are all good points to discuss. I think first of all, I wouldn't think about this as being separate. It all falls under the same Measure 109 framework. We've already talked about a word that people like to use a lot, which is scope of practice, and there's multiple scopes of practice being thrown around. If it's helpful, this could just be viewed as another scope of practice. There's an entheogenic scope of practice that applies to the entheogenic practitioner. And I think that is what's so great about Measure 109, is it's flexible enough and broad enough to welcome all of these different approaches. I think also it's helpful to think about it this way, perhaps. Arguably, people who practice these entheogenic practitioners do have a right legally under the US Constitution to practice. And if something like this does not exist, it's kind of saying, you're not welcome here. And it kind of pushes those people out of this system, which I think would be really unfortunate and probably not in anyone's best interest. And then finally, I mean, you've identified a real problem, right? The cost has really not been discussed very much on this board. And then this does appear to be a viable way to bring the cost down, the first that's really been discussed in any depth. So I don't think that's an argument to exclude it. The fact that it might bring the cost down for some people who have a sincere practice, to say, well, this is going to bring the cost down for you, but not for the average person who doesn't, is not seeking spiritual or religious use. So for that reason, maybe we should not encourage it. I think that's I think we could think about it as an opportunity. Anyway, those are just my thoughts on that.
Rachel. Rachel, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I completely agree with everything that Mason said, and not to belabor any of those points too much further. I'll speak specific to a couple of things, affordability being one of them. We had a lengthy discussion. Like, I encourage everybody to listen to yesterday's equity subcommittee meeting, because this is all we discussed. And this issue around affordability and the only way to access affordable services being through an entheogenic, practitioner and service center. Many of us just believe that's just not true. having this sort of opportunity actually might help correct for the abuses that might otherwise occur. And I'm sorry to reduce this to the term abuse, but this is what over commercialization of things like psilocybin, like cannabis do, right? It just, let's just take cannabis as an example. By and large, what Oregon has through the adult market is just not affordable to the average consumer, the average patient, certainly. And so, you know, I'm in the camp that if we were to allow this and it becomes successful, it would really make the rest of the system reconsider how they're valuing, right, their product and services, if only to be competitive. And I think that's better, right? To have healthy competition in a way that better ensures equity and access and affordability, right? Equity through access and affordability. And I happen to also think you mentioned ratios, that what is proposed in this framework actually does correct for that in the peer support section of this document, right? You know, whereby more people are being trained to be held, you know, accountable to ensuring safety, right? Throughout throughout administration sessions. And the other thing I really like is, and Mason, you touched upon this too, is bringing everybody into a program, right, through which best practices can be established, through which there are harm reduction guide rails by way of OHA, you know, oversight, if you will, to use a colonized term, unfortunately. But I think that's what we care about, right? We care about all Oregonians and folks who are coming to Oregon who want to partake in psilocybin services, whatever they look like, to do so through a safe system, and a safe system that we all can keep our eyes on. So what John Dennis said in this last meeting that I wasn't able to attend is that it's probably better and safer to take all of this in under the purview of Measure 109. You know, invite as much use that exists in our state into this Measure 109 container, because it is a massive harm reduction tool as much as it is an opportunity that I think a lot of people would welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Pilar?
I'd like to add to what Mason and Rachel said, a couple of thoughts. And for me, this is really where the spirit of decolonization that has been expressed by the OHA working with the psilocybin program will be tested. It will be tested in this way. The spiritual and religious practices around plant medicines and around psilocybin will not follow the logic of the medical system. So trying to fit spirituality and religion and spiritual practices into the logic of the medical system, it will basically take away, strip everything, almost everything from those practices. And so in order to preserve the integrity of the freedoms of spiritual and religious expression and practice, we need to allow a space for practices that have a different logic, instead of trying to force everybody to accommodate to the one logic we know. Safety, ethics, and accountability are a part of this proposal, and everybody wants that. But the relationship with psilocybin, the understanding around how one works spiritual, is a completely different thing than what we do clinically. And if the OHA really wants to open a space for the colonizing practices, there needs to be a decision to open a space for that different logic to be in place. And I'm complete.
Thank you, Pilar.
I have all the snaps for Pilar right now. I just wanted that to be recognized on the record.
I confess, this is Barb Hansen from the advisory board and subcommittee. I was re-looking at the definitions on page 1 of this document to try to figure out what precisely entheogenic practitioner privileges means. And it says the privileges described in. And I don't know if that shows up elsewhere in the document. It seems like there should be a more complete definition somewhere of what those privileges include.
But the privileges are really the bulk of the document. I think
Okay.
that's my
Sort of all
way I read it.
encompassing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question for, I think, Jesse. If licensure in all of the categories, facilitator, service center, manufacturer, is an annual process, would an endorsement be an annual sort of application or renewal process? Does the OHA know the answer to that question yet?
Yeah, for the recording, Jesse Sweet with OHA. Speaking generally to all endorsements, they will run concurrent with the term of the license. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and thank you, Jesse. Yeah, that's gonna. There is a section that expressly spells out privileges. There's also a section that spells out limitations, right? So, in case anybody wanted to understand, both the bookends there.
Mhm.
And if anyone would like me to go to any particular point of this document, just please speak up and I'll go there. I'm not sure whether to hover on this section or just scroll through.
This is Barb Hansen again. I confess that I was simultaneously scrolling through the document and I was down on page 3, moving on to page 4 too. And so maybe it would be helpful, Jesse, if you wouldn't mind moving down, because it's the section that starts special duties of entheogenic practitioners. That's the bottom of page 3, and then so this is Barb again, to getting back to, I think, Sarah's question. Some of these feel like a parallel process to some of the recommendations we have made to the OHA. And so I'm just trying to figure out if an entheogenic practitioner would go through facilitator training and then have to meet, take the exam and have to meet all of the licensing requirements as other non-entheogenic facilitators would have to do. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. And I don't know who would have the answer to that question, but Rachel has her hand up, so I will call on Rachel.
Thanks, Barb. This is Rachel. I think it's page 3 has the answer to that question. That's up with the, the criteria for being granted in section 4. So Jesse, it would be at least on mine, on mine it's page 4. Okay. Yeah, eligibility is limited to individuals who hold a psilocybin services facilitator license, or someone who holds a service center license or a manufacturer's license, right? So the answer is that these folks getting this endorsement would already have had to met minimal criteria, the criteria everyone else has to meet to become a licensed facilitator, service center, or manufacturer, right? So everybody would be held to the same training standards. They would have to go through the same programs everybody else would have to go through.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a very detailed and well-written document. It's so detailed that I confess my brain couldn't take it all in. So lots of scrolling. Okay, Rachel, you have your hand up still. Do you have a new thought to share, or you were just responding to my puzzlement?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Other comments by members of the subcommittee? Questions, comments, concerns? Does anybody want to make a motion regarding on the motions list, the motion 2?
Yeah, if we're ready, I would like to make a motion that, I'm just going to repeat the motion, that the OHA adopts the regulatory framework for licensing entheogenic practitioners titled Privileges and Duties of Entheogenic Practitioners. This is Pilar Hernandez talking.
Is there a second?
This is Dr. Rachel Knox, and I second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, let's see. Sorry, I have to fix my screen so I can see everybody. Mason, are you with us?
Yes, Barb, thank you.
Do you want to vote, please?
Yes, I vote yes.
And Rachel?
Yes.
Pilar?
Yes.
Sarah?
No.
And this is Barb. I will vote yes. I guess my caveat is as long as the other licensing requirements have to be met. So I believe we have 4 yeses and 1 no. Jesse, did I get that count correct? So the motion passes?
You're correct. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And I think next then is the discussion and votes on access for people with disabilities. Jesse, is there something we should have on the screen to guide our discussion on this? Maybe the motions list?
Yeah, give me just a moment. I was scrolling through and forgot to change the document I was sharing. Okay, can you see that now with the highlighted
Yes.
portion?
Thank you.
Great.
So can everybody read the motion? I don't know, Jesse, if we have attendees who are only on the phone. I'm happy to read the motion if we need that.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So motion 3 reads to promote access to psilocybin products and services for all people in Oregon 21 years of age and over, for whom they are appropriate. A stated goal of Measure 109 in parentheses, the OHA shall not limit permissible psilocybin products to those that are orally consumed. Some people with disabilities have difficulty chewing or swallowing, and alternatives to orally consumable products shall be made available to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access to psilocybin services. Discussion or comments or questions? question? Does anyone want to make this motion?
I can make the motion. Should I read it again?
No, how about as written?
I'll make the motion as written.
Thank you. And I will second it. So the motion, any further discussion? Okay, I'll go the opposite order. So Barb Hansen votes yes. Sarah,
Yes.
Pilar,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Mason?
Sorry, had to mute something. Yeah, vote yes. Thank you.
All right. We have 5 yeses, so this motion carries. Motion 3 carries. All right, and now we are on the next discussion for motion 4, discussion and votes on long-term strategic plan for ensuring that psilocybin services will become and remain a safe, accessible, and affordable option for all persons 21 years of age and older. Thank you. Let's see. So I'll read the motion. Approving only comprehensive training programs that offer both core training and practicum training privileges, wealthy established training programs outside of Oregon at the expense of Oregonians who wish to start their own training programs to further the goals of making psilocybin services safe, accessible and affordable, which is a stated goal of Measure 109, the OHA shall approve partial training programs in addition to comprehensive training programs. I'm trying to, sorry, I need to scroll back. Pilar.
I don't have a question, but I do have, I want to make a comment. And it's a concern that I will continue to express as long as I'm around and this process is happening. And this has to do with the issue of a structural lack of equity and unfair competition. It's going to be very difficult for local programs for Oregonians to establish themselves and compete with these really well-funded organizations coming outside of Oregon to establish themselves here. There is a problem not only in terms of the amounts of money that they are investing to make this, health a business. To me, health is not a business, but to make health a business and to get incredible profits out of that. What I have heard, these trainings are going to cost. It's just amounts that only people who have a lot of money are going to be able to pay. So we have to find ways to, in some way, protect small businesses, Oregonians, so that there are programs and service centers that are true, that can serve communities, that know the communities that they are serving, and that actually have a chance. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a lot of training programs and amazing facilities like resorts that cost a lot of money and that nobody can afford, and offer a few scholarships here and there for the quote unquote poor people that need to come and be helped. So I really disagree with that kind of model, and I'm very disheartened by the lack of protections that the state and that the state has put forward to help its own people. So I do like this motion. I think we, the OHA can determine what constitutes a partial program. But I think this motion is important to have some options for Oregonians to develop their own businesses.
Okay, thank you, Pilar. Rachel?
This is Rachel. I completely agree with Pilar. I'm also concerned with, the exclusivity of a lot of these training programs, regardless of their cost too. I'm very concerned that, economic equity is going to unfortunately result in a lack of diversity, racial and ethnic diversity, cultural diversity. Right. Very concerned. And I know the equity subcommittee has already made this recommendation. I don't see any other way around it. And to Pilar's earlier point, right, if OHA is ready to make space for decolonization, then I think this is another area where they can prove that and welcome these partial programs as we've contemplated them. I think it's very simple. I don't think this would be challenged to administer. I think it's a viable pathway, and the folks who want to take a comprehensive training program will. Those who prefer to take partial training program and build towards, completing, their rubric, if you will, they all still have to take the same examination at the end of the day, right? So what are we really concerned about? I don't know.
Okay.
To me, this seems like a slam dunk, and it's always been a no-brainer in my opinion.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'd like to make a motion to move forward. Motion 4 is written.
This is Barb, and I actually have a question, and you all know me by now about how I like precise language. The one question I have is, what is a partial training program? Could one training program offer, say, 30% of the content, and another offer 50%, and another offer 75%, and they're all considered partial training programs? And is the state going to sort of titrate the licensing fees accordingly when they license the training programs? Or anyway, and maybe the state doesn't even do that, I apologize, but Pilar, your hand is up.
So I think Barb, that's where the details are, and the devil is in the details, right? To me personally, I think where I would make the distinction is in dividing the didactic part of the program from the practicum part of the program. I wouldn't want to divide the didactic part into pieces, because to me that will break the cohesion of what you need to learn, and there needs to be continuity. So that's what I would consider personally.
Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to say, the training subcommittee has already, thoroughly examined this and actually made the recommendation to the board, and the board did approve the recommendation for partial training programs to exist. And so I just wanted folks to know that this did not make the draft rules by OHA, and we were told that they didn't, because after careful consideration, the OHA determined that this recommendation was too resource intensive to implement effectively. They go on to say, if partial training programs were to be approved, OHA would be required to verify that each applicant for a facilitator license has completed the entirety of the required training curriculum. This could mean verifying records and transcripts from multiple sources. OHA anticipates that we will not have access to the resources and expertise required to do this work. So the basis of my previous comment was in response to that, because I really don't think it's probably that cumbersome, right? And you could put the onus of responsibility on the applicant to turn in, all of their their transcripts, etc. Right? I just think with some earnest contemplation, OHA with very few staff could figure out, how to make this process more equitable. So I'm actually glad that this subcommittee is revisiting this motion, because I think we need to reiterate that we do think this is important.
Yeah.
And
Mason.
it's not good
Oh,
enough.
sorry,
Right?
sorry.
We don't have, to me, it's not good enough to say, preemptively, we're not going to have the resources to figure this out. I'm done.
Thank you, Mason.
I think that, the curriculum is already divided up pretty nicely into modules. And I think that, lends itself pretty well to, being an easy plane in which to divide them up. Which I think was what the original recommendation was, I think. I can't recall exactly.
Yeah,
though.
I have it. You all know I keep all these things, right? The recommendation approved on November 5th was that partial training programs may be approved to offer specific core training to students while not providing all core training. Partial training programs must clearly identify to prospective students that they do not offer all required core training. Partial training programs are not subject to the requirements that their students complete practicum training. And I think to Pilar's point too, some programs could just offer practicum training, and that's their partial program, right? And perhaps that people need to have that option so they can make sure that the full suite of their training is affordable for them. And to Pilar, to your point, I think certainly there could be something lost, right, by breaking up core training into partial programs, but there could also be something gained as well. We have yet to see the depth of enrichment that a partial program might offer. And I think in a lot of ways they might offer more, because we might see partial training programs become highly focused in areas that are very necessary. And I think it's a mistake to say what has been said, which is that, these comprehensive training programs can partner with a partial program, or they can contract with them. No, they're not. They're not. Everybody wants their cake and they want to eat it too. Like, that's just the way things go. So yeah, I'm in favor of, I support Pilar's position and Mason's, and I think that I really support a convergence of the two, which is that partial training programs, by and large, they're just not a comprehensive training program. You have to be clear and concise up front to students so that they know that not all are covered, but they otherwise have to have completed all core training programs and their practicum training in order to apply for that facilitator license, right? Pass the same test and apply for that facilitator license.
Okay, thank you. So Sarah made the motion as written. Sarah, is that still the case? She has disappeared from the screen. Oh, thumbs up. Yes. Do we have a second?
This is Rachel. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mason Marks,
Yes.
Rachel Knox,
Yes.
Pilar Hernandez,
Yes.
Sarah present,
Yes.
and Barb Hansen votes yes. We have 5 yeses, so motion 4 is passed. We will move on to motion 5. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Administering psilocybin during practicum training requires training programs to either become licensed psilocybin service centers or to have close ties with a licensed service center. Therefore, requiring psilocybin to be administered during practicum training, unless special condition applies, privileges wealthy established training programs who already have those relationships. To further the goals of making psilocybin services safe, accessible, and affordable, again, a stated goal of Measure 109, the OHA shall allow training programs to administer substances other than psilocybin during practicum training to simulate or approximate the effects of psilocybin. Alternatively, training programs may administer no substances and use role play to simulate a psilocybin administration session. No special conditions need apply, and training programs need not obtain the permission of OHA to utilize these alternatives during practicum training. If alternative substances are administered by training programs, the programs will comply with state laws governing their administration. Questions or comments or discussion? Sarah.
Can anyone lay out what these other substances may be specifically?
Ketamine. That is specific. That is specifically what I'm thinking about. Ketamine.
Ketamine.
I'm sorry, ketamine, and other people might want to work with cannabis. Cannabis is another option. I think those are the two that are legal that can be used.
And Pilar, you had your hand up. Was it just to answer Sarah's question or, okay.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this makes sense, especially with within the scope of OHA's authority to do so. They're just approving the curriculum, right, of these programs too. So I'm not sure OHA even has anything to say about this other than to note that they're not going to deny a training program that might do these things, right? And care that they do only approve training programs that, if they should use alternative substances, are doing so, right, within the confines of state governing laws. So,
thank you,
I mean,
Pilar.
I'm supportive of this. I don't know how much of it is truly necessary, except again to say that OHA won't deny a program should they do any of these things.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's good to know, Rachel. This is important again because of issues of equity. If a program is not connected to a service center, we don't know what the service center and the training program landscape is really going to be. We don't know. People have not, there's no application yet. People have not applied. We don't know what's there. And it's going to take time for programs and service centers to establish relationships that work, where there's a goodness of fit. So I think, again, to protect the local, the local economy and to protect small businesses, it's important to give people alternatives while they create their networks and develop the connections between training programs and service centers. And in the meantime, people need to have options to learn what it's like to be in an altered or a non-ordinary state of consciousness. So it's really important that this is spelled out and that no assumptions are made.
I agree.
Mason?
I do see this as an important equity issue because, as we know, there are already companies that have formed these relationships. They're coming from out of state, out of the country. They have a lot of money. They're going to have the advantage over other people. These companies already have their business structures, being set up. They have their money flowing. They're ready to go day one, before the system even opens to the average Oregonian. And I think I don't I don't see any reason that a training program would have to use psilocybin. Would it be ideal to? Sure. But if someone doesn't want to go to a program that doesn't use psilocybin, they're free to do that. I don't think it's going to, lower the quality of the training in any way. And it seems like there could be other substances that you could legally use that don't present those same barriers of having to have a service center or have that pre-existing relationship. So in terms of just putting everyone on the same, or if not level footing, getting closer, a step closer seems like a good thing.
Any other comments or questions? Sarah.
I think that, it is within current governing laws, but I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they have to take a substance that they don't want to take in order to complete the training program. I also think it's worth potentially limiting what those substances are. I mean, or not, I don't know, but would alcohol be one of them? Would, what other things we think about? And Pilar is shaking her head like, no, it wouldn't. But I think that we should be clear on what is an appropriate alternative. And then, some safety things around that for the safety of the students who are being asked to use that as an alternative.
Sarah, are you suggesting amended language for this motion?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly what.
I'm trying to pull it out of you. And while you're thinking, we'll go to Rachel.
Yeah, I actually disagree with Sarah because the OHA has no authority over these training programs. They don't. The only authority OHA has is approving training programs for the curriculum, approving the curriculum of these training programs. These training programs can otherwise do whatever the heck they want to do, right? Conduct all sorts of other services, offer all sorts of other products and programs. So, that was well ingrained in my mind as the equity subcommittee was working through, our question, which is how do we ensure that these training programs are in fact equitable, but without any way to hold these training programs accountable to hardly anything. We recognize that many of our recommendations were moot, right? They were untenable. So I would prefer we not. I think as written, it's right? If alternative substances are administered by training programs, the programs will comply with state laws governing their administration. You mentioned alcohol, but we administer alcohol in the hospital for certain reasons, right? I think we want to hold all operators, whether they're training programs or licensees, to a certain ethical standard. But then again, OHA does not have the authority to do so with these training programs. This Measure 109 just didn't create that opportunity.
Thank you. Mason?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's right. And we haven't done that for psilocybin. We didn't create any, there's no guidelines for how a training program would use psilocybin. And this isn't suggesting that every person going through a program would use the substance. This is just saying that somebody would, and that would get the trainees comfortable with someone in an altered state. And if it was ketamine, it would obviously be a licensed healthcare provider who was capable of prescribing and administering it. So I think it's probably better to just leave it fairly general.
What if it was OHA shall not deny a training program license based on their use of other substances? So rather than the word allow, it would be should not deny.
This is Rachel. I favor that too, Sarah.
Good suggestion.
This is Barb Hanson. My question in the second to last, well, I guess it's the last sentence. If alternative substances are administered, could they be self-administered by the trainee? I'm just wondering if someone might try to wiggle out of it by saying, well, we're not administering it, but we're allowing the trainees to ingest alternative substances. So I'm just not sure about the word administered. And I don't know if that only bothers me. Or it could say maybe during training programs, administered during training programs. But again, if there's an issue, I could see a training program saying, well, we didn't administer anything. So I know that's a nuance. So Mason, your hand is still up, so I'm not sure if you had a comment.
I like your suggestion. What if it just said are utilized? Yeah, what if it just said that? And maybe that's
Are utilized during.
That's what I was gonna say too, because training programs don't administer, right? If you really want to be a stickler.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's more clear that way.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other suggestions, or is anyone ready to make this motion as amended during our discussion?
I just want to note that I amended the back end of that sentence as well. I want to make sure everybody saw that.
Yes, thank you. The programs will comply with state laws governing their use and delivery.
I think delivery might be a little bit confusing there because it could be mistaken for like logistical. Provision might have the same issue that we just addressed regarding who is.
You want to just have a period after the word use, their use?
And I would probably use the word practica just for the plural.
I couldn't have made that nuance in a million years, Rachel, so kudos to you. Any further discussion? Does anyone want to make this motion? Oh, Rachel?
Sure, Barb. This is Dr. Rachel Knox, and I move to approve motion 5 as amended here.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Pilar Hernandez.
Pilar has seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, we will vote. I'll start the other end. This is Barb Hanson. I will vote yes. Pilar,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
and Mason Marks.
Yes.
Okay, we have 5 yes votes, so the motion carries. And I think we move on. Do we have any more motions on the motion list? Jesse, or do we
Yeah,
move?
thank you, Barb. Jesse Sweet for the recording. I closed the document, stopped screen sharing because we've reached the end of that document. We do have a couple other items on the agenda.
Yes, thank you. I think we are we at considerations of whether clients should be able to access common or outside areas on the premises of the Psilocybin Service Center at which the administration session is held?
Yes, and again, this is Jesse. If I may, I'd like to provide a little bit of context for this agenda item. In Measure 109, there is a list of recommendations that the measure requires the board to make. And this item was on that list. If we look back at the prior recommendations that this subcommittee has made regarding facilities, it seems kind of implicit that there would be access to a common area. But I requested Mason put this on the agenda just so that we have an explicit recommendation that lines up with the language of the measure.
Jesse, this is Barb. I'm wondering if you could put the language from the ballot measure on the screen, just so we can look at that and make sure that any motions we make are congruent with the language in the measure. And I'm going
Yes,
to ask you to search that 71-page document.
Give me just a second. I'm getting there.
Yes. In the meantime, does anybody have any comments or discussion you want to make about whether you think clients should be able to access common or outside areas of the Psilocybin Service Center? Sarah?
I think clients should absolutely be able to go outside, and we need to make sure that that is legally written so that they can be outside.
Thank you. Pilar, I saw you nodding your head. Do you want to add a comment for the record?
Completely agree. Extremely important. Yes.
And this is Barb, and I'll say I know the licensing subcommittee has discussed outside area usage, you know, a lot in the last year. So we absolutely need to make sure that clients can access it. And Jesse is now putting it on the screen. Aha, so yes. Whether clients should be able to access common or outside areas. That's exactly what you had on the agenda. So thank you for indulging me, Jesse. Does anybody want to make a motion? Or Sarah, was your statement of affirmation actually a motion in disguise?
But yes, I think it was a motion in disguise, Barb. Thank you. I will make the motion to accept that motion that we saw previously, to come into compliance with ensuring that clients are able to access outside areas while on psilocybin facilitation.
Is there a second?
I second. This is Pilar Hernandez.
Thank you, Pilar. Any further discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. The motion has been made and seconded. Rachel Knox?
Yes.
Mason Marks? We'll come back to Mason. Pilar?
Yes.
Barb Hansen votes yes. Mason, are you available to vote on allowing access to common and outside areas?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Barb.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. All right, we have 5 yes votes. So we have formalized that we think clients should have access to common and outside areas. Thank you. Now I need to adjust my view to go back to the agenda. Well, that didn't take us 10 minutes. Jesse, unless I'm wrong, I think we are at the point of public comments, and we have quite a bit of time left. So I will turn over the management of public comments to you, if you don't mind.
Real quick, Barb, I want to jump in here and just thank
yes.
you. Thank you for facilitating today. You're wonderful.
Actually, this is, I don't know much about psilocybin, but facilitating meetings actually is in my skill set. That's what I do a lot. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Barb, and sorry to have that thrust on you at the last minute. That wasn't the plan, so my apologies.
Mason, I appreciate that you were able to be here to be present for all of our votes today. So thank you while multitasking. So I think maybe your other meeting got the short end of the stick.
Well, I had someone warning me, fortunately, when a vote came up, texting me frantically, so.
So Jesse, is it okay to turn it over to you for management of the public comment period?
Yeah, thank you, Barb. I would like to note that the agenda has the public comment period at 5:45. So I would like to keep it open till at least 5:45 in case there are any members of the public who were planning to log on at that time. I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to make comments. We do have, looks like 2 people who've raised their hands so far, and I'm going to pass the baton to Meredith to moderate the public comments. And if we are wrapping up before 5:45, I think we can just take a short break and then reopen the comment period at 5:45. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. This is Meredith Ryder with OHA. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone that if there's anyone that's on the phone and you want to raise your hand, you can press *9 and that'll raise your hand on the screen for us. And it looks like we do have plenty of time for the questions or the comments that we've got. There's about 6 people with their hands up. And so I'm just going to start with Kyle Meyer.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to the subcommittee on this incredibly, what I view as historic turning point in these discussions. I wanted to also express my extreme enthusiasm at this step and the importance of this document. For what it's worth, I see it as the cornerstone of the foundation that will be equity and the means of ensuring that equity will be possible and not excluded somehow, if by accidental means through this measure. I also wanted to say that to me, this represents not the end. These recommendations, they shouldn't be viewed as the end all be all. This is going to be an evolving process and part of the beginning. So I think it's important that we remind ourselves that by securing this important aspect to the measure, that it opens paths to eventual equity in other regards as well. So I think it safeguards that notion, and that we are all in this country bound by a social contract that supersedes all those other notions. And the first line of that social contract extends to Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, I know that in modern practice, there is substantial abstractions to this, but in order to purely honor that social contract as well, I believe these notions and the ideas and the proposal discussed and voted upon today is a huge step in honoring that notion as well, among so many other critical ones in this discussion. That all being said, I also see this as a template to advancing scientific inquiry, such that it could be adapted to operate to fill any remaining existing knowledge gaps, and they are many, with respect to this field of inquiry that has long been taboo. So I am pleased beyond expression to see the advancement of this and to bear witness to it. So thank you so much to all of you in fighting for this, in trying to honor this on behalf of Oregon's citizenry and the eyes of the waiting and watching world. I can't express it enough, like I say. So thank you, and I wish beyond wishing that the rest of the board at large can see the gravitas of this important step. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate your comments. So we have quite a few hands up now, so maybe if we keep the comments to around like 3 minutes, and then if people have more comments at the end and we've got extra time, then we'll circle back to some people. Right now we've got Joshua.
Hi, this is Joshua Pritikin from Southern Oregon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I remember Kyle Meyer also commented yesterday at the Equity Subcommittee meeting. And well, before I get to that, I just want to echo Kyle Meyer's comments that I'm really gratified to see the Theogenic practices approved by the subcommittee, and I hope that the full board also approves it and the OHA adopts it in some form. Now, to get back to Kyle Meyer's public comment from yesterday, he was wondering why that the OHA is ready to make, if the OHA is ready to make special kind of rules for entheogenic practitioners, then why can't researchers also have some additional freedoms in terms of manufacturing, and seeing that the board also, or the subcommittee also looked at the allowing different species to be grown for entheogenic practitioners, then why not also allow different species to be explored for research purposes as well? And so I would ask the board to or the OHA to come up with some kind of research endorsement on the manufacturing license that allows for exploring all different kinds of psilocybin producing species. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Next we have John Dennis.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I want to express my sincere and deepest gratitude to you all. This has been kind of a long project, put a lot of love into it, and it means so much to have you all weigh this stuff seriously and take it seriously. And I know there's kind of some of the material in the proposal really can be challenging. I can understand where some folks might have some difficulty with it. And I just really appreciate the earnestness with which this group has struggled with the issues. And just I want to also acknowledge that in the year or so that we've been going to meetings at the licensing, I think this is the last scheduled meeting of the licensing subcommittee, and that's always been I think one of the more productive committees that weighs through issues in a relatively unbiased and impartial way. And I just have really found the discussions in this committee to be some of the more kind of balanced and insightful discussions. So I just want to express a gratitude for that as well. I think with respect to the entheogenic practitioners proposal, one of the ideas behind this is that we've had a person who runs a website that has crowdfunding options, who has said that they would be willing to do crowdfunding through their platform to help entheogenic service centers to get started. So it kind of adds to the community piece of this so that it can remove barriers to entry. We're actively working on trying to find ways to make this work. And it wouldn't, during the equity subcommittee meeting yesterday, I was really just so deeply heartened to hear discussion of maybe there are some ways that we could solve the affordability problem inherent to Measure 109 with some of the kind of issues raised in the entheogenic practitioners proposal. I'm looking forward to that meeting here in a couple of weeks about how we can help try to bring down the cost of the rest of the program. But I definitely share the concerns that you raised, Dr. President, about just not wanting to have the lowest cost option be particularly a religious option. I've raised, again, the article by Matthew Johnson on several occasions about how there is a problem in that. I think part of the solution is, I think, the fact that we grant this not just to purely religious practitioners, but also non-religious spiritual practitioners or entheogenic practitioners, I think helps avoid potentially a lot of the concern there. But I share the concern, and I've tried to incorporate that into the framework. And I'd just like to continue to offer myself as a resource for people who are struggling with the issue of how we Measure 109 intersects with religious activities, because it is a fairly complex conversation and issue that touches on culture, religious practice, and law. So thank you all for this moment, and thank you, Kyle Meyer, also for your passionate comment. I think I was really moved by your support and enthusiasm, and I share your gratitude here today. So thank you, everyone that's been kind of supportive of this proposal. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. All right, next we have Jim. Jim S.
Hi, all.
Hi there.
I just want to say I really appreciate all your hard work and care that you're obviously putting into this. Also, John Dennis, that was really cool that you acknowledged that Sarah's comment about how there's a kind of subtle pressure to conform to an ideology sometimes. You don't want that to be in play here in order to save money. And I appreciate your acknowledging that as a consideration. I'm also, like a lot of you, concerned about lowering the costs of psilocybin sessions. And, of course, that can be done through group sessions. And I know, well, I was assuming that you are the subcommittee that was going to think about maximum ratio of clients per facilitator. And I was thinking that not only an entheogenic practitioner facilitation, but even with regular facilitators, if the group also included certified harm reduction peer counselors, then you could reduce the number of facilitators required. And, if there could be a separate certification, because like MAP's Zendo project, for example, and I know some of the board members know of other reputable harm reduction peer training programs, but there could be a certification for that. And those programs are practically free or exactly free. And so the price of entry into it is low. And so if you can have fewer facilitators for a given group size by supplementing them with these harm reduction peers, then the cost could be lowered for people and access could be enhanced, increased. So that's what I want to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jim. Next we have Regina.
Hello, I'm Dr. Regina Moore. I'm a pharmacist here in Oregon and a co-founder of the Psychedelic Pharmacists Association. Though these are my personal views, mainly I wanted to comment on the entheogenic practitioner suggested rules. I think there's a lot of points that bringing this model into Measure 109 can help to address. And I think it's important for us to consider what spirituality can mean and what the value of spiritual practices bring to individuals. Though we are referring to these settings as churches, and that does potentially bring up some concerns and considerations as Sarah did, and this framework would allow for religious use, there are many more people who could benefit from further developing their spiritual practices with like-minded members of their communities, and working to establish spiritual communities that they can take part in. personal benefit and development of spiritual practices should not be overly burdensome in terms of cost. And I think that we really should put some effort into exploring this further and seeing if we can find a way to make it work, and allowing for uses that are more than simply recreation or wellness, and also not exactly therapy. And that would hold a lot of benefit for many Oregonians. Moving on to one of the other proposals here about equitable access to training, just want to reiterate that I personally have concerns about the accessibility for me. I'm an Oregonian. I've been here and involved in whatever ways I can since this process started. I would like to be able to pursue facilitator training, as I believe I have important things to offer and want to be able to help others in the state. Given the costs, my rural location, and other factors, I'm not sure that it's something that's going to be manageable for me at this point. And I'm also not sure that there will be enough initial training programs available for all of the interested parties. So yeah, I urge you all to consider the ways to continue to get accessible. Think about people in rural areas who may not be able to offer these services on at regular intervals. So you know, the costs that I would have in investing in something like may very well not be recouped anytime soon. And that's potentially something that's okay for me, but it's definitely a burden and is going to affect my personal ability and many others to take part. So I think that's it for today. Thank you all. I know we're getting close to the end. I appreciate the work everybody has put in here. Exciting and important stuff that we're doing, and there's a lot of eyes on Oregon. So let's do our best to get this right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Regina. I just want to remind everyone we have a little more than 15 minutes. So if we could keep our comments to just 2 or 3 minutes so we can get through everyone, that would be great. Next we have Prema.
Thank you. Even before the Reinheitsgebot, German beer purity laws, were instituted in 1516, the Inquisition was murdering witches and pagans and people who worked with psychotropic, psychedelic plants and fungi. And even across Asia, for thousands of years, there have been many conflicts that are termed different things, such as the occult wars or shadow covert wars against plants and fungi and the mystery traditions across the whole world. So we certainly feel like it's been a historical day, as Kyle said. My colleagues and myself in our private chat were snapping and howling and lots of emojis as the votes were happening and up to the votes. So we are extremely grateful that the direction is shifting away from the overly medicalized direction that has been built thus far into this program. So thank you to those that are helping the people to realize the vision that feels in alignment with at least what my community has been intending and hoping for with this work. We're very happy. Thank you sincerely. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right, next we have Jody.
So, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, thank you, Meredith. Thank you to everyone for this amazing moment. I support everything Prema just said. It's historical in the largest possible sense when a government authority in this westernized culture we live in takes the time to recognize indigenous, cultural, spiritual, and theogenic practitioners who, for some of us, our ancestors were killed and harmed and tortured and marginalized. For the people of the Americas, especially the practitioners here, this is a very meaningful vote that you took, and you're a part of a great restoration on the spiritual level today. And I really want to acknowledge all of you for that. I promise you I will do my part to make sure that entheogenic practice in Oregon is in integrity and even expands, and that we can reach out to our clinical colleagues and we can all work together harmoniously to create the best and highest psilocybin services. The research is on our side. By acknowledging the mystical, we enhance the clinical results. And I'm really looking forward to the ongoing process and feeling much gratitude for all of you today. And I hope that the full board will continue the momentum. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jyoti. Next, we have Amir.
Hey everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's a brief comment. Some things that kind of came up while you were all having your discussions and votes was specifically about how running parallel processes with the Enthogenic practices. And there is case law, and I don't know how it aligns with how the OHA is viewing it, but
Oh,
there
Amir,
is case law, the Church of the Holy Light of what I'll do is I'll put it in chat, make it easy, because my internet connection's poor.
oh, I don't think that we have the chat set up right now. I was just trying to let you know that you were cutting out a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but basically, you know, I just want to say I think there are some frameworks that could be utilized by OHA as far as running the parallel processes to making it more seamless as possible, and also recognizing, you know, the goal of decolonizing how OHA is applying its policies and procedures. And so I just want to say thank you, Pillar and Rachel, also for bringing that up. It's very important to me as a member of the BIPOC community. And I just appreciate all the work you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Jeremiah.
Hello, Jeremiah McCoy. Just wanted to offer some gratitude and say thank you for all of this incredible work that you're doing. I think that including the Anthogenic practices is a huge step in the right direction as far as decolonializing and also getting greater access to people. You know, the equity issue is definitely a big deal. And I liked one of the comments that one of the other public members made about doing bringing costs down by doing things in group settings. The only real concern, I guess, that I had throughout the hearing was the idea of using alternative substances as a way of reducing costs. Didn't really make any sense to me. We're thinking about getting a manufacturing license, but we've also often thought perhaps, you know, there would be like a percentage or something of the crops that would go towards equitable cost lowering services. So perhaps, you know, having some sort of state, you know, here's, you know, more affordable as far as the actual mushrooms, or doing training in larger groups as well, or something like that could help bring those costs down. But I don't see how using something like ketamine would be an equivalent to the experience of psychedelics, or at least of psilocybin specifically. So it's just a thought that I had. Another thought was about the growing of other types of mushrooms. Right now, it's been just psychedelic, you know, cubensis. But we have a small mushroom farm. We grow things like lion's manes, and you know, we could grow things like reishi and stuff like that. So we'll just have to see how that works out, and if this is something that you could do on the same site or not. It didn't seem like that was really brought up in the rest of the law so far. So we'll just continue to make some comments about that. But yeah, I think you guys are doing a really amazing job, and looking forward to see how this all develops. Oh, and then there was something that came from one of the meeting earlier today, which was a research endorsement, which seemed like a really good idea as well. That, you know, we don't just focus on increasing access to, you know, people that have like a spiritual calling, but also that there's a lot of researchers that deserve to be able to have access to this, you know, for not just for the therapeutic settings, but for all kinds of different mental health issues, and, you know, even things like Alzheimer's or research purposes. So, you know, it seems like this is all moving in really good directions. And I just wanted to say thank you again. Yeah. keep up the good work.
Thank you, Jeremiah. We've got one more hand up, but before I call on you, Jason, I just wanted to remind anyone that's on the phone calling in that you can press *9 to raise your hand if you have a comment as well. So next we go to Jason Scott.
Hello, everybody, and just a big thank you, first of all, to John Dennis for putting together the Theogenic practitioners proposal and all of the heart and care that he has put into that, and the way that he formulated that and made it accessible and something that could be easily added to Measure 109. I think, speaking personally, there seems to be a large disconnect between this largely bureaucratic process under the OHA and with the Psilocybin Advisory Board, in an attempt to make things regulated, in an attempt to understand, and an attempt to kind of like put things into boxes, but it kind of leaves the mushroom as the living organism that it is out of the picture. And I just really appreciate everybody here putting in that vote and passing the recommendation on to the Psilocybin Advisory Board, because I think that, one thing to keep in mind is that what the OHA has proposed and what the Psilocybin Advisory Board has proposed under Measure 109 is an ideology as well, and that's an ideology in of itself. And I think that there can be equitable access to these medicines through entheogenic practitioners that don't necessarily have to make people ascribe to an ideology to be able to access them. So I'm just kind of hoping in the larger context as well that, on one level grateful, that there's another ideology or another group of ideologies that's being adopted or potentially adopted based on the Psilocybin Advisory Board into this larger measure, which is going to open the doors for a lot more people, but hoping that it can create greater access for individuals and for people financially, where they might be able to go there and not have to subscribe to a religious or spiritual ideology that's outside of their sort of comfort. And just thinking in terms of, that that measure leaves it broad enough that there can be so many different types of entheogenic practitioners, that there doesn't necessarily have to be one or just a few sort of prescribed ideologies that you have to abide by to access the medicine. So again, just thank you to everybody who considered it, and for your thoughtful opinions and perspectives, and for passing on that recommendation, and just hoping for good things in the future, that the Psilocybin Advisory Board can see that and hear the voices of the people, and can take that in stride. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Kyle, I know that you've got your hand up, but we have a new speaker with their hand up, so I'm going to let
By all
Emma.
means.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Please, by all means.
Okay, yeah.
Hey.
Emma, you can.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Derek Andre, and this is Emma Andre, my wife. And I just want to thank you all so much. I know that you've received a lot of thanks, but it's not a coincidence to me that we're evaluating this beautiful mushroom at this time of such strife and division, not only in our country, but in the world. And I'm just really moved and touched by all the people that are coming together to make this history. And that Oregon, the state that I grew up in and was raised in, is the epicenter for this new work. And it just makes me really emotional. And I just wanted to thank you all, especially John Dennis and all the entheogenic practitioners that he's brought together, including my wife and I. This mushroom saved us after a horrific trauma that we experienced in our family. And I really look forward to helping to bring it to others so that they can heal spiritually. And this is very important work. Just bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right, Kyle, we've got about 4 minutes left. Oh, and actually one more thing, Kyle, I'm just gonna do one more shout out that if there's anyone that's on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. So it's all you, Kyle.
Thank you. I realized I failed to acknowledge the credit that the Andres and many other commenters had touched upon. And I wanted to also specifically thank John Dennis for his remarkable efforts in advancing this proposal and writing it in the first place. And on the subject of other mushrooms in cultivation, I believe that this too is a beginning. One need only consult the literature to find that amongst Mesoamerican practitioners of psilocybin mushrooms, there are other mushrooms like Dictyophora induciata, now known as Phallus induciatus, and a suite of compounds recognized by science well after they were identified by these Mesoamerican communities as having neuroactive benefits in the compounds, the dictyophorines. So there is a wealth of neuroactive compounds in the fungal space that would likely see enormous benefit in tandem administration, and that may hold a path to resolving such burdensome and difficult diseases like those amongst the neurodegenerative disorders. This includes Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ischemic stroke, and that psilocybin may be the first step in really being able to critically evaluate these other vitally important fungal secondary metabolites and the role they may hold in human health and benefit. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak, not once, but twice. And sorry to take up so much time.
No, that's perfectly fine. Thanks, Kyle. Jesse or Barb, do either of you have any like final thoughts?
This is Barb Hanson, member of the advisory board. I just wanted to say I'm glad we had extra time today for more public comments and more time for each speaker. As speaking as an advisory board member, it's always tremendously valuable to me to listen to what members of the public have to share during our meeting. So I appreciate everybody who raised their hand and shared. Thank you.
Thanks. And I would just like to thank Barb again for stepping up with zero notice to facilitate this meeting. Thank you, Barb. You did a great job. And thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care, everybody. Bye.